Now, last week I talked about the increasing pressures in the child protection system after caseworkers in Narrogin sounded the alarm about their workload. Now, they say they're at breaking point and it's putting kids at significant risk. Their union says some positions have been vacant for more than 18 months, and workers are often taking kids home with them because there's nowhere else to put them. The union says they need 200 more caseworkers right now at a minimum, and I'm told 1,000 kids are still waiting for placements. Now, I did speak to the Department of Communities on Friday, to Lindsay Hale, the Executive Director of Service Delivery, and it was pretty hard to get a straight answer. Now, Karl O'Callaghan, the former Police Commissioner, was listening to that interview with interest. As I said, he's a former police commissioner, but he's also a foster carer. So he looks at this through two lenses, and he wants to share his thoughts with you this morning. Nice to see you, Karl. Welcome.
Good morning, Nadia.
First, your interest in this as a foster carer. How long have you been caring for children, and do you have some at the moment?
Yes, we do. We have three living with us, and I always say about 3 or 4 more in orbit, which are sort of connected to us, but not necessarily living with us. They've been through the home and they've moved on, and so we're in contact with them, but 3 living with us permanently now.
Why do you foster care?
Look, when I was police commissioner, one of the things I made a lot of noise about was the amount of kids who were on the street unparented at night. And I did talk to my wife about it at the time, and I said, we can do something about this. We can offer some placements for kids who otherwise, wouldn't have that sort of security and that routine and that safety. And so we went through the training program with the Department of Communities. It was DCP at the time, and qualified, and then we had some kids placed with us very quickly after that.
Okay, now you have recently been speaking to some people involved in the system around the state. What have they been telling you?
Well, I've been speaking particularly to groups who are providing Aboriginal health, Aboriginal support in different parts of the state, and I've got to say that without exception, all of them say, and this is what they say, where are the Department of Communities? They can't get workers, they can't find people to assist them with problems they've got. This is in regional Western Australia, so they're not talking about Perth, but they say there's nobody available after hours, there's nobody available during the day, there are vacancies which have been not filled for a long time. There is a revolving door of people going through regional WA, so people go out there for a while, they work, then they leave, and then they can't get replaced. So there is an enormous problem with vacancies throughout the whole of the department. And I don't think I spoke to anybody when I was doing this inquiry who didn't say there was problems with the Department of Communities.
And so what happens to those kids? Is it potentially a criminal life that they get into?
Well, there's a whole range of issues, of course. There's that some of them are their safety is in danger, and so they need to be at least case assessed or removed. If you go back to the coroner's inquiry, the Ros Fogliani inquiry into the deaths of 13 children who committed suicide in the Kimberley, that report was handed down in February 2019. There were 5 adverse comments made in that about the Department of Child Protection failing to case manage people properly or failing to make assessments. If you talk to people in the Kimberley today, they will say that the response from the Department of Communities is no different to what it was then.
So nothing's changed?
They're saying nothing's changed. They certainly can't get any assistance. And look, I speak to police all the time, of course, and they can't come on this show and talk about these sorts of things, but universally, those police officers who are running districts and divisions will say, after 5 o'clock, we can't get any assistance at all from the Department of Communities. We've got to rely on crisis care, and they are singularly unhelpful.
Or they take them home with them, which is not their job. As a caseworker, it's not their job to take those children home.
And they shouldn't. And they shouldn't. Look, and I think there are, I don't know why they're doing that, because there are a lot of foster carers in the system.
Well, they're saying there's nowhere else to put them. It happens in Narrogin quite a bit.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think regional Western Australia, it could be difficult. But it's a problem that, I faced when I was police commissioner as well. And at the time, I had a number of interactions with the then head of the Department of Child Protection about the fact that we can't, or we as the police when I was there, can't get support from the department once 5 o'clock comes, and police spend an inordinate amount of time trying to manage children who are at risk and find placements for them in the middle of the night.
So what do you do then? What happens to those kids?
Well, ultimately, they have to be placed with a responsible adult. Police officers could be doing that for hours and hours and hours. Eventually they find someone. Sometimes crisis care can manage a placement, if all else fails. But they start by going to families and trying to place them with families or relatives or whatever. Often, those people are not even in a condition to take those kids.
Karl O'Callaghan, the former police commissioner and a foster carer himself, is my guest this morning. And if you do want to share your experiences, particularly if you work in the department or you might be a foster carer, because there's a lot of people talking about how difficult it is to deal with the department, you're welcome to call on 1300 222 720. So the union says that at the moment at least 200 caseworkers are needed at a minimum. Do you think that's an accurate estimate?
Well, look, from the perspective of talking to people who deliver services and require support from the child protection people, and also talking as a foster carer, it is very difficult to access on-time services from the department. And I take nothing away from the caseworkers. I think they do a great job, but they are under enormous pressure and they will tell you so. So I know, for argument's sake, that sometimes I can wait up to a month or 2 months for a reply from the department for a single question about an issue. And it's not about the fact that they don't care, it's the fact that the caseworkers are overwhelmed, and they will say so. So, the union is saying 200 workers. I think that's probably right. But I mean, part of the problem is not just the 200 workers, but actually filling the vacancies that they have. As a foster carer, we also have revolving doors of caseworkers. So a new caseworker gets appointed to the kids you're looking after. They come and meet the kids and they sit down and they say, look, how are you going? And we'll be in touch. 2 months later, there's a new caseworker and they come out and they do the same thing all over again. And it's just this revolving door of caseworkers. The kids don't even build relationships with them because they don't know. None of my kids at the moment would know who their caseworkers are anymore.
Which is a worry.
Well,
which is a real concern.
It is a concern because ideally what you want is a good relationship between the foster carer and the department, and a good relationship between the department caseworker and the children who are in care.
Okay, so then you talk about vacancies. So are the two issues, do they go hand in hand? Because the minister argues, and I spoke to her about this last night, that she's put in place since she was in government more than 150 full-time equivalents of child protection workers, right, over the last 4 years. But she says, I acknowledge there's a problem with vacancies. Doesn't that go hand in hand? Is it you've got vacancies because you actually don't have enough staff to fill them?
Well, I think the problem is for the end user, it doesn't matter what the argument is, whether the vacancies are unfilled or whether there isn't enough caseworkers, because it's the end users, the foster carers, who are actually struggling to get support from the department. And so, I've spoken to foster carers who say there are other children we need to take into care, but we can't do it because we don't have the capacity. And I think you started by saying that there were 1,000 kids waiting for some sort of intervention or placement. There's something like 2,500 or 3,000, there might be something like 5,000 kids in care in Western Australia. So you're talking possibly up to 6,000 children who need some sort of placement or intervention, and the department can't provide it. And that's a worry.
There are people calling in that want to talk to you this morning, Karl, but I just want to clarify those figures from the Minister's office. She says between 2017 and 2020, there was an increase of 159 caseworkers and 148 service delivery staff. The total increase over that period is 307. In comparison, between 2012 and 2017, the previous Liberal National Government increased the number of caseworkers by just over 35 over those 5 years and decreased the number of service delivery workers by 19. So that's coming from the Minister's office. Yeah. Is it also the case that the demand is more, that you actually these people are seeing more kids than they did 10 years ago?
Yeah, and a lot of the social issues that we've spoken about on the program over the years are impacting on this. So the demand is definitely going up. And what the thing that I always am concerned about is that when there's an increase, for argument's sake, in police, the government comes out, the Premier comes out, the Minister comes out and says we're going to have 800 more police officers, and there's a big fanfare. Which is
what's happening right now. They've recruited for another 800.
Nobody's ever come out and said, guess what, we've got 150 new child protection workers, we should celebrate that. And if you increase the size of the police force by 800 or 1,200, what do you think is going to happen? There's going to be a whole raft of children intercepted, brought into care, brought into police management, and they'll have to be placed somewhere. So you have to have a balance when you invest in these things.
Let's take some calls. Brendan, good morning. I was going to say the police commissioner. The former police commissioner is listening.
Yeah, good morning. Look, I was a candidate for the elections, federal elections and the state election for up north, and I've got great concerns. And, as a stopgap, I've suggested to both of our white ministers, federally and state, that we use the Indigenous Ranger programs as a safe house system. So the police have got somewhere to drop these kids, and obviously it's not just Indigenous that have the issues, it's across the board. But as a short stop, until we can get foster care for these kids, we use the range of programs that we could run, 24 hours a day, possibly from the schools or whatever, and there's a safe place for the kids to go. Because, when I was up in Halls Creek, the police up there were saying, they can arrest the kids that are on the street for misbehaving and such like, but they've got nowhere to take them. They can't take them home. It's not safe.
Brendan,
And if we had a range of program with good mentors and a safe place for the kids to be as a short stop until we can get care for these kids, and it's good coaching for them.
all right, let's see what... thank you, Brendan. Let's see, what do you think, Carl? Is there merit in that?
I think we do need options. Obviously, we're going to need options if we can't get enough caseworkers, and they need to be placed somewhere anyway. And there are a lot of good Aboriginal families up there and caring for children, but most people will say there are not enough of them given the breadth of the problem.
Brendan, thank you very much. Let's go to Deborah, who is a foster carer. Deborah, nice to talk to you. Good morning.
Oh, thanks. It's just I'm a foster carer, and I think the caseworkers are just so overloaded. Where I am, they've got 15 kids each.
Yep.
And not only do they have to, cater for the biological parents and their families, it's the carers and their families. So you can quadruple that number of people they have to deal with each case. And not only that, they've got court cases that they have to deal with, and they've got in-house stuff they have to deal with. That number has to be reduced. I've actually written letters on numerous occasions that I can't get in contact when there's an issue. I can't get in contact with the caseworker because they're off sick through stress leave, or they're in court, or, it could be up to a week before I can sort of get a hold of a caseworker. Now, I know that there's a heap of people in my area that have made inquiries to me about being a foster carer, and I'm upfront with them. I'll say, look, if you're going to do this, you're doing this off your own back and your own resources, because you cannot rely on the department to give you help. There is no relief here. So if you're a single person taking on a child and you need relief, there's none. So you have to deal with the parents sometimes, because the word gets out that they know where you live. So you get hassles from them. So you have to and the poor police, there's not enough of them to deal with all this stuff.
Yeah.
So reduce the number of kids or caseworker load to minimum or maximum 10 kids, and make sure that the department have got follow-up procedures that actually work.
Deborah, thank you. Carl, do you want to respond?
9 out of 10 times that I call the department, I don't get an answer from the caseworker. The caseworker is out, they're engaged, and I don't expect them to sit at their desk waiting for me. If I send them an email, you get radio silence. No, thank you, we got your email, we'll get onto it straight away. It may be days before they get back. Sometimes it's months before they get back. So you don't even know what's going on. There's no thank you. Look, I've got your email, I'll get onto the problem straight away. So I agree, these caseworkers are in court a lot of the time. Often I call the switchboard and the switchboard says, such and such is not in today. I don't know what that means. Sometimes they say they're on a training course or they're not well or whatever. And foster carers trying to access support from caseworkers is enormously difficult. And as I said at the beginning of the show, this is not about the caseworkers. This is about the enormous caseload that's dumped on them.
It's their workload. Listen to this text that's come in from Rob. He says, 8 years fostering regionally. We have a young person in care, 9 months without a case manager for him. This child thinks he is not worth as much as another child. Now, that is incredibly sad. If that young child thinks that they are not worth as much as the one, across the room.
And look, I mean, I've worked in government for a long time, so I know how to navigate the system. I know how to manage bureaucracy.
But most people don't, Carl.
But I find this I would say that I'm skilled in that area, and I find this the most frustrating thing that I've ever done. In fact, most of the work that we do with our kids, and they're good kids, so they're not high needs kids. We just manage these things ourselves without any interaction with the department at all.
Peter wants to talk, and in fact, Peter Peck's called up, who's the CEO of the Liquor Store Association, so I'm very interested to see what he wants to contribute to this. But a standalone department is what a lot of people are saying needs to happen again. It's been the Department of Child Protection is now absorbed into this big super department.
Yep.
A lot of people have contacted us over the last week saying it actually needs to be separated out again. Would there be merit in that?
It's lost in there, and I can tell you, since it's been emerged, nobody set the world on fire in terms of housing or child protection or any of the other things that come under communities.
Let's go to Peter. Peter, good morning to you. Hi.
Good morning, Nadia. Good morning, Carl. How are we going?
Good day, Peter.
First of all, can I say, Carl, I absolutely take my hat off to you. You're a person that doesn't just talk about it, you actually walk the walk. And you've done it personally, and to me, that gives you more credibility in this space than a lot of other people. The problem we have is that the police are the receiving end.
Yep.
So I had a conversation, well, there was a town meeting in Broome, and had the department heads all on top of the stage answering, the regional head for DCP. And I asked the question, why is it at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, if somebody gets scooped up by the police then have to put them in a cell, and no child should be going into a cell, but then one vehicle comes off the road because they've got to keep an eye on that child. So that reduces the response and the resources in that area. God forbid you have two children, because they have to be in separate cells, which means more people are being drained. They then don't get addressed until Monday morning, because the thing is, to the department, the children are safe because they're with the police. And that's the system that currently is running in the north, and that's what needs to change. We cannot be using police as babysitters. It's not appropriate to put young children in a cell, because then that starts to paint a picture of police as well to these kids. It's not a positive picture either.
Well, I think, unless if they've been arrested, they may be in some sort of custodial arrangement for a while. But the issue is not really about arrested kids. The issue is about all of the kids that police take into, pick up in the middle of the night. We did this thing at Burswood when I was a police commissioner, and there were 300 kids taken out of the Burswood precinct or the casino precinct at 1 o'clock in the morning, and police had to find places for them. So, some of these kids were only 9 or 10. They're in the casino precinct at 1 o'clock in the morning. Obviously, they need care. And it's this sort of process where the police have to run around trying to find a place to put them that is really challenging, because there's no departmental support once we get to 5 o'clock.
Peter, thank you for your call. A couple of others calling in. I will try to squeeze some more calls in a little later in the program. I do appreciate you coming in, Karl O'Callaghan, and people are also texting with some suggestions. We've got to try and find some answers here. And for you, somebody's saying, what about regional boarding school type accommodation for a short term for emergency cases? I mean, is that something you could look at? I mean, as you said, we need options. I
think some sort of shelter arrangements, and I think there are options like that being looked at. So we do have to find at least short-term options for these kids where they can easily be placed and safely looked after.
I really appreciate you coming in. Thanks for what's been an important discussion.
Thanks, Nadia.